I'm King Lincoln. Let's take a break. My channel for the last year has been Game Pass reviews and Humble Choice reviews, and I'm not really planning on a major change, but something happened. About a month ago I saw an article that shook me, and I'm not going to drag it out. It's probably in the title and on the screen. Zachtronics is shutting down. Zachtronics is not well known as a studio, but it's a game studio I love, perhaps more than any other, and that of course includes RGG, the studio who makes the Yakuza series. Zachtronics is a studio that makes me feel seen. It's a studio that makes games specifically for me, and while there are other games that I might be in the minority opinion on, like Lawn Mowing Simulator, Zachtronics I think is different. So with their closing, I figured I'd try to eulogize them, similar to Congregate, which is still running, so eulogies are a relative term of course, but I'm not really sure I can. I could make an extremely long dive into who they are, but instead I'd rather spend my time telling you about Zachtronics and getting you to check out their games. This isn't a last-ditch effort to save the studio, mind you. They're on their way out, and they said nothing will change that, and we'll talk about that too, but what I want to talk about is why I care so much about Zachtronics, what makes them worthy of this video, which I probably won't be doing for any other studios, not even ones I've personally worked at. Before we get into the meat of this video, I'm just going to say, I'm not here to focus on comparing Zachtronics to other studios, or other studios to Zachtronics. That's really not what I want to talk about, and in this case, I don't think it's worthwhile. I might bring up some games that I think are worthy of consideration for fans of Zachtronics, but this is more about their style of game development. It would be really easy to simply say Zachtronics creates programming games. It would make sense why that matters to me. I'm a programmer, and 40 hours a week I work on code or designs for programming. It's been my job for about 15 years or more now, so Zachtronics makes games for programmers, and because I am one, that's why I care. Taking this video all the way back to TIS 100, I'll say flat out, absolutely. The reason I like TIS 100 is it's a programming game where you write assembly. I've said that if you want to be a programmer and somehow beat that game, you probably are one, or at least understand assembly far better than most, and technically I haven't actually beat that game fully. But replaying the entire legacy of Zachtronics for this video, I'm not really sure that's it. Yes, there are aspects of programming in most of Zachtronics games, but other studios have made hacking games like Hacknet, or even similar types of games like 7 Billion Humans, and neither have spoken to me much. I'd also point out that, well, maybe it's a different form of programming. Space Chem and Opus Magnum aren't programming, at least not on the same level. There are instructions in the gameplay, but a lot of games are instruction based for puzzles, and yet it's only Zachtronics that has grown my love. I think there are 3 key components to what makes Zachtronics stand out even among similar games. The one thing I always notice on a Zachtronics title is how their puzzles don't avoid complexity. In the first level of a Zachtronics game, you'll start with some simple ideas and prove that you can handle the basic functionality of the game, usually finding the manual, but after a couple hours, each puzzle starts taking a lot longer, not through repetition, but by having to handle multiple concepts and combine them all at the same time as you're approaching new levels. Many levels in Zachtronics titles can take me 15 to 20 minutes if I'm lucky, and while some levels of a puzzle game may stump you like that, in Zachtronics games it's more focused on active steps of solving, such as making, testing, and fixing an approach, finding bugs, potentially using a completely different solution if the first one fails. There's just a lot involved in the puzzles here, and it's almost an active step to solve the puzzle rather than just thinking about it. Simply put, the approach to complexity makes Zachtronics a lot closer to programming in general than most puzzle games. It can be a bit draining to solve a puzzle in these games, but that's also what makes it stand out, as it pushes the player to rise to the occasion rather than just repeating some simplistic action over and over. And the fact that you're building a solution instead of performing one step at a time helps with the second piece. That second reason Zachtronics game stands out is probably the most recognized feature of a Zachtronics game. It's the histograms. I mean, look at these things. Leaderboards have been a staple in many games, but in puzzle games, they're a little out of place. How would you add leaderboards to something like Myst or Limbo? I'm sure people will start with a time-based leaderboard akin to speedrunning, but does that really show how good you are at solving a puzzle or how good you are at memorization? These histograms, or just leaderboards, are purely based on the solution, how fast the solution runs, how many parts the solution uses, and usually some other metrics such as the floor space of a solution or how many code blocks you need. Each of these will push the player to optimize some part of the design if they want to climb them. What I find fascinating though is due to that complexity, each of these metrics is usually only able to be tackled by different designs. Maybe your best cost approach needs more time to run, but your fastest design is remarkably over-engineered, and you'll have to have some strange slow optimization to get limited space usage. The same puzzle may have to be solved in 3 different ways to match the best, and it's the complexity of the puzzles that really allowed this to be a fun and engaging exercise rather than a simple additional puzzle. But also, these aren't Zachtronics challenges. Rather than making you challenge some predetermined goals, Zachtronics offers you the best times of the community and gives you a chance to try to optimize your solution to match or even beat them. The game itself gives no further recognition than a plot on these graphs. If you want to progress in the game, beating a level even with a frighteningly bad solution gets you 100% of the credit, and that means these titles aren't taking a stand on if this is something required of the player or not. I can't think of another puzzle game that does something like this. Now, there are a few that count the number of moves a player will do or a scoring system, but it's not the same without the extreme complexity and the ability to optimize the solution. Even 7 Billion Humans, which is a similar game, gives you set goals rather than challenging you on a leaderboard, and that's probably because most people will be able to optimize those solutions pretty easily. The one issue I do have with the histograms is, well, look, as you're going up the list of levels, oh no, where are all my friends? Oh god, what's happening to everyone? Exapunks does seem to have lost some of my records, but rerunning a level and suddenly I'm back in the list. But you can see, as you progress in the game, not everyone's gonna make it. So, I did say 3 reasons. Well, the third is more subjective. I found every Zachtronics game to be fresh and new. I'm sure some of you might think TIS 100 was their first game. No, they actually already started with Space Chem and from there made Ironclad Tactics, a card game that I'm not going to show, and Infinifactory before TIS 100. These are all unique and different titles. And then after the pure programming masterpiece of TIS 100, it was actually followed by Shenzhen IO, a little while later Exapunks, which are programming games. They're all equally unique and different. And TIS 100 is focused on pure assembly in a standard microprocessor. Shenzhen IO deals with just that, the I/O, or input-output, and allows you to design chips for that. In the clip I'm using here, I'm actually doing the I/O of a video game controller, which is pretty cool to do. Exapunks adds in the motif of mini-robots running around a virtual world and even the player's body, but these 3 are the most similar, and each one has a unique concept at its core. Then you have a game like Opus Magnum as well, which deals with Waldo's combining elements, which again, does sound like Space Chem, but these games look and feel extremely different. I don't know, I just find like each of these titles to be super unique and fresh to the point where I can easily switch games and still feel like I'm playing something new even if it's from the same company. And that's really why I love the studio. It's a studio that always spoke to me in the types of games they made. Well, okay, mostly. That's not to say every game is perfect. Zachtronics tried a few different things. I did mention Ironclad Tactics, and I wasn't a huge fan of that title, even though I like card games. Mobius 93 does get the Advanced War styles right, but I haven't dived extremely deep into that one. And oh yeah, Eliza. I liked Eliza, but it was such a radical departure for the studio. Almost every game Zachtronics made had a story, but in Eliza's case, that's really what it was, an interesting visual novel which came from an odd source. However, I enjoyed Eliza, I had fun with parts of Mobius 93 that I experienced, and, well, okay, Ironclad Tactics never really connected with me. But ultimately, I'm going to miss Zachtronics, as I said in the beginning. Their final game, Last Call BBS, is it for them. It feels like a collection of interesting and unique mini-games that were left over from prototyping, and like most Zachtronics games, it's extremely interesting, but the title of that last title is right. This is essentially the last call for Zachtronics, and after this, the studio will close and all developers will go their own ways, and we may never see another Zachtronics game in any form. Or what I hope is more likely, the studio will close, everyone will go their own way, and Zach Barth, the founder of Zachtronics and the namesake of the studio, will eventually come out with another of his brand of titles, and if that happens, I'm going to be excited no matter what it ends up being. Even the studio closure does have until the end of the year when they said they'll compile all the versions of Solitaire into a single game, which I'll buy because, as I said, this is my favorite studio and I'll support them no matter what. But you know, this video has really only scratched the surface of the story. There's so much more to discover with the company. It's a strange link to my other eulogy. Zach Barth used to release games on Congregate under the name Crispy Creme, and I do remember playing many of those when they were released, and they were good but strange, similar to every game here, just a unique experience. I could also talk how the programming games have PDFs of their manual that have additional notes as if they're relics of something else. Each game has this unique story as well that's kind of impressive for a puzzle game. There are also additional games I haven't covered, again, so you can discover something yourself. Nerds Online, for instance, is a free title that's worth playing with a group of friends. It's a nice, fast game of competitive solitaire, and it is a very heated battle. I'm actually shocked that it works so well. You know, I want to tell my favorite story or piece of trivia about Zachtronics, so I've been going on and on about this crazy game studio that's super nerdy and probably only appeals to me and a few other people. There's an alternate universe where Zach Barth worked on a previous game a bit more. It's a title called Infiniminer, and and in our universe, the story goes that he stopped working on it after about a month when the source code leaked due to his own fault. The title, however, inspired another developer named Notch, and that inspiration created Minecraft. Now, the reality is if Zach Barth kept with the game, players would probably have to code up each block individually or meticulously design structures in a way that only programmers would love, but I still love the fact that one of the biggest franchises has a link back to my favorite developer. So for no other reason than he helped create Minecraft, it's worth taking a closer look at Zachtronics. And if you're a frequent visitor to this channel, as I mentioned, I usually cover Humble Choice and Game Pass. Well, if you bought previous Humble Choice games, several Zachtronics titles have been available there, but I'd highly recommend starting with Opus Magnum if you have that, as that's probably their most accessible title. On the other hand, if you're a Game Pass subscriber, check out Last Call BBS, which is now on the service. It'll give you more of a buffet style approach where you can try a little of a few different types of games. If, however, you just wanted to hear a fellow fan of Zachtronics talk about them, well, I hope you enjoyed my opinions on them, and if so, you can check out Talos Principle and Baba Is You. Both of those games are fantastic and worth playing, and do not miss out on them. Let me know down in the comments what you're thinking, if you're a fan already, or if you're now interested in Zachtronics. Heck, maybe just something I missed, because honestly, the more I learn about Zach Barth and Zachtronics, the more I'm amazed by this team. And if somehow this doesn't catch your fancy, well, thanks for listening to me talk about a studio I look up to and will heavily miss. It's always a bit sad when a major indie studio closes, but I can't help feeling hopeful, and this does feel like it's closing under perhaps the best circumstances. It's a time of their own choosing rather than insolvency. With that said, if you want to hear me talk about more games, click that subscribe button, ring that bell, and share this video with someone special. Let them learn about one of the best game studios. I'll pop up my latest Game Pass video as well, where I directly talk about Last Call BBS, but simply put, I'm having a good time with that one. See you next time.